And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
When that calmness means so much, Tyler, and there are other times like this week where it's probably a lot of people really need to feel like they just need to sprint. Mm-hmm. But happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks, and you can subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as, of course, we are here to chat some St. Patrick's Day Canucks talk after not a lot of games this week here, but a lot of things to talk about. And Sean is here. Hello, Sean. How are you doing?
Cheers, Kev. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm doing all right. It's a nice, beautiful, springish day here in Calgary. It's great.
It is. It's a nice springish day here in Vancouver as well. It feels like playoff weather. Chris, in Kelowna, as some have called it. How's it feeling there?
I mean, just like you guys, it's a pretty nice spring day out here. Nothing but blue sky and mid-teens temperature-wise, so can't really complain given the time of year.
And Tyler, long time no call.
Yeah, nice to see you and Chris again. I've been on with Sean. It seems like the last run of shows that I've been part of. But, it was like 9 days ago. We're in the midst of probably our harshest snowstorm of the winter season. Now it feels like summer outside. So a lot can change in a short period of time around here. But and it definitely has that playoff weather feeling to it as well. So good to be with the three of you.
Yes, it does. It does feel like the playoffs are upon us, and they are upon us. And we'll get into, I think a lot of our conversation is going to branch out of the Colorado game, but we probably should chat a little bit about last night as well against the Washington Capitals. And of course, the luck of the Canuck in terms of goals is not running well, as they've scored a combined total of 4 this week. I thought it was less when I started that sentence, but it was 4, which is not horrible, but it's not great either. And they lose 2-1 on the Washington Capitals, which did have a controversial call here as well, which is, part of the conversation this week. And it's good to have Tyler on. Always good to have Tyler on, especially when the word officiating comes along. Now, last night, very questionable icing call towards the Canucks, where it appeared to Phil DiGiuseppe beat Alexiev to the puck for the Capitals. Depending on, there was a couple of angles, arguments from some people that it was Alexiev, and then there was the discussion on Hockey Night in Canada, which was about the red dot. So maybe can you clear? Okay, let's do some Hockey 101 here. Tyler, let's clarify the icing rule as is.
Yeah, the linesman needs to judge once the plays reach the dot there, who's going to get to the puck first. It sure looked like from every angle that the Canucks player was going to win the race to the puck. Once either player was at the dot, it looked like the Canucks player was still going to get there first. What I found watching the replays, it didn't really look like the linesman was even judging the race. It's kind of like he had his mind made up already. So I don't know. He had a long conversation with DiGiuseppe, and it'd be fun to know what that was about. But the call was wrong. I don't know how you look at it at any angle and see that the other guy was going to win the race to the puck. So, then it turned out to be a big moment in the game, obviously, because right off the ensuing face-off, the Avs scored. Or sorry, the
Capitals scored.
The Capitals scored last night. So, yeah, it's these things do happen, and unfortunately, that's one that was pretty big because the game turned, and then they never really recovered after that. But that one's on the lineies this time. It's not even on the referees. And as far as getting the crew together and overruling that and putting it at center, it's a judgment call. The referees are not going to throw their partners under the bus like that. It's just, if people want that to happen, I can understand that, but it's just not going to happen. They're going to stay with the line.
Hold on. Could another linesman have said, wait, no? Could the other linesman have overruled him?
That would be more, I think, acceptable if I were part of the crew. And I think even just watching as fans, that's a linesman thing. Like, let them work it out, right? I mean, who's running the game here? Okay, the referees have their job, the linesmen have their job. If there was an issue, I'd like the lineys to get together and try to get it right. But generally, if it's anything that's kind of close, and it was close, but I don't think it was right, and they stuck with that call.
Yeah, it's just frustrating because it was out of the Avs game and then into this the Capitals game. It just feels like almost every borderline call seems to be going against the Canucks, and I'm not saying that there's anything like crazy about that, because that does happen regardless of team, regardless of time of year, regardless of everything. It does happen.
Every
go
team
through stretches. Yeah. So it's just it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate just in the past couple of games that a couple of borderline calls have gone against them, and the other team has capitalized on pretty quickly afterwards. So it is what it is. I don't think there's anything that needs to be looked too far into that in terms of whether or not the Canucks are letting the officiating get to them, because it happens to every team.
I'll let the other guys chat here in a second, but last night it was really the one ruling on the icing that really was the big issue. I thought their standard throughout the game was good. I mean, how many times do you watch a National Hockey League game and there's only 4 total penalty minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't happen very often, and it made for a very quick game. We had that continuous run of play. Like there was the Oilers game on at the same time, and I mean the Canucks game was over. Was 7 or 8 minutes left in the Oilers game, and they both started at the same time. So made for nice watching in terms of a quick game and not a lot of referee intervention. But the teams didn't really push the envelope with physicality or any kind of dirty play. The Colorado game was a totally different story there, where standard was all over the place, and they really never got it right in the first place with the hit on Manson, which I know or the Manson hit on is it JT Miller?
Yeah.
That and we'll talk about that. That one got off to a bad start with their standard, and it never got better, and it made for a very frustrating experience.
I'll let Chris. Chris, go ahead. What were your?
I mean, I don't really have that much more to add. Just overall, like you guys have been saying, it can be frustrating in the sense of overall consistency and getting the calls that you're hoping for. But yeah, overall, I feel like the refs are doing as good of a job as they probably can. But yeah, obviously when you're a fan, you're going to be able to nitpick from a certain bias. But overall, if you just try and look at it from a objective, league-wide sort of view, yeah, it's ultimately in a okay place, I think.
Well, I think what was interesting to me watching the Colorado-Edmonton game last night was Louis DeBrusk. There was a penalty, a missed call. The Oilers fans were upset about a missed call. I can't remember who the player was off the top of my head, but I do remember what Louis DeBrusk said is it's going to take. This was late this was when the game turned over from Vancouver to Edmonton. So it was about five minutes ago, and DeBrusk said this. It's going to take a lot more than that to have a penalty called. And I think that's part of that inconsistency that we're starting to see. What's a penalty in the first is not a penalty in the second or a penalty in the third. And that, I think, is what's going to get that always gets the fans frustrated a little bit, especially when it's a call missed on your team, or you feel that there's a call missed on your team. But so I think we're starting to see that in terms of the officiating.
And that's always been part of the NHL, right? How it seems the needle seems to move as the game goes on. By the time you get to second or third overtime in the playoffs, it's like you got to pitchfork somebody or shoot the puck over the glass to get a penalty.
Yeah. What I thought actually from the Colorado game, the call that, like, we'll get to the Manson one in a second. I just wanted to point out though, it's very rare that you see someone get thrown out of the faceoff on the opening faceoff, and that happened. And I thought that was kind of that sense that to me sense that was a chaotic. That we were going to have a bit of a chaotic day in the officiating circle.
That is an interesting observation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I found that odd too, but led to a goal.
It worked out for the Canucks though, so.
Yeah. It's almost like he put a little burr in the saddle there for JT Miller and went and took care of it.
But yeah, let's talk about the specific Josh Manson hit, which he did not get supplementary discipline for. I think Josh Manson was expected. I think when Josh Manson made the hit, I mean, you look at the replay, I think it looked to me like he thought he was gone. Like he thought, honestly, that was the game. Like he
knew something was coming there too. I mean, not like I'm not taking it like it was apologetic for making the hit, but he knew that was a bad hit.
Yeah, for sure. And so it was ultimately surprising that it only became 2. And it's, this was just, I know that there's going to be arguments about consistency and, what about this hit? What about that hit? But Matt Rempe did get 4 games for his hit on Jonas Siegenthaler. And I'm kind of thinking, well, if you're giving him 4, is this not? I
mean, we've talked about this here. That's just not how the NHL operates. They evaluate case by case. They don't operate, comparable to.
And they're 2 absolutely completely different hits too. Yeah. If you're going to compare it if you're going to compare it, there was the one that was most similar. I can't remember who it was, but there was one that was a board hit on a player who was sort of lowered down because of the board battle they were in, and it got hit in the head from almost basically from behind, which is very similar to what happened to JT Miller there, and that hit got 2 games if I remember correctly.
It was the Parker Kelly, I believe, is what you're referring to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's just if you're gonna try and make a comparison between hits and what happened with the supplementary discipline, that's almost I don't understand what the difference is between those two. And that's where I would love to see some yeah, but
it's frustrating.
What's the difference? If that's what the frustration part is. Like the in-call game is the in-call game. You're gonna have inconsistencies between referees, between the 2 referees within a game, the different referees that are refereeing one game versus another. That's going to happen, whether or not they get the angles that the refs see it at.
Yeah.
But the supplementary discipline aspect, those look so close to identical, and yet one got 2 game suspension, one didn't get anything, and that baffles me.
Well, I mean, we would love to have sort of like a standard scale of what how many games for this and that, and be able to compare 2 incidents and understand what the scale is for all of the discipline. But I mean, we've seen this for years. I've given up on the NHL with this. I mean, they're not interested in comparing incidents. This is how they operate. We're judging this incident on its own merits today. We don't care about what happened yesterday or before that. Now, it shouldn't be that way, probably in most fans' opinion, but that's sure how it looks to me. So yeah, you are going to get this inconsistency, but the NHL is a business. Why they do it that way, only Gary and his people know. But it's they're clearly not married to the idea of trying to have equal discipline for things that look the same. That's just not part of how the player safety department works, whether you like that or not.
Yeah, and I mean, as Chris mentioned, I mean, it depends. There's every fan base that will feel some sort of rage, in that situation, depending on where you're from, and that's totally fair.
Yeah. Okay. So like on the Manson hit on JT Miller, right? Like people are like, how is that not 5 in a game? Look, if the shoe were on the other foot and JT Miller did that to Manson and they called 5 in a game for the same hit, what do you think the Canuck fan reaction would be like? People would be losing their minds over it. This is the old situational officiating thing, right? The situation, if the situation works for you and they rule a certain way, then it's great. Otherwise, no. It's like, what the fuck, right?
Yeah. Well, a couple of years ago, Evander Kane knocks Nazem Kadri bullseye in the numbers in that Edmonton, Colorado series, and Edmonton Oiler fans are outraged that was what the penalty was given.
Yeah.
And then let's not forget earlier this year with the whole Ridley, Greg Morgan, Riley situation, where Leaf fans
and people were they were twisting themselves into pretzels to try and come up with some justifications for this and trying to figure out what the suspension was going to be. Like, no, the NHL didn't care about that. They just looked at this particular incident, and 5 games was, to me, not that surprising considering what occurred at that moment in that circumstance. Look, all of this stuff is why you see Rick Tocchet and Canucks players try to take the high road on the refs. I know there's a lot of fans out there would love to just see the coach just rip the referees. What are you gaining from that, though?
You don't. You lose.
You're sticking with your team. The guys know Rick has their back.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Management, if they have some real problems with certain rulings, are doing the necessary work behind the scenes to question that with the league. You don't need to make it this public theatrical display because we've seen in the past. I don't think there's much upside to that.
Yeah.
The refs are still there, right? Like it's like when Sheldon Keefe was into it with Wes McCauley. It's like, fans think that him getting kicked out was worth it. Worth what? Wes is still reffing.
Yeah. And then
it doesn't change anything.
And then you had the people applauding John Tortorella last week for standing up to Wes McCauley, which I thought was garbage from Tortorella, to be honest with you. That he deserved the suspension he got.
It's pretty Bush League to do that, right? I mean, I'm surprised we actually haven't seen that before, where somebody thumbs their nose at it and sticks around for a while. But yeah, no, you can't. I mean, you can't have a situation where the coach challenges the ref's authority so blatantly and then it goes unpunished. No wonder Torres got 2 games and a fine for that.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's it's fine. Canucks fans should be very much allowed to be upset with not only the only Josh Manson only getting 2 minutes and no supplemental discipline, but the chintzy quote unquote hooking call that led to the 5-on-3 that got the 3-1 goal or the 3-2 goal in the third period, where you got Nathan McKinnon selling that like he's trying to sell, like Devin sells peelers in small town Canada. It's like you're allowed to be upset with it. You're allowed to say that was a bad call. But
I'll tell you, that's upsetting.
You have to find a line to that and not go too crazy over it.
That's upsetting to the referees themselves too, right? Like if they go back and look at that play, they're going to see they're going to see that it was sold from now on the ice at the time. It happens fast, right? I know in my experience, when I've been duped into something that was really sold that probably shouldn't have been called, it has turned into a disaster almost every time that's occurred. The game just because then everybody's like, well, it's kind of we're on our own, right? And you see how it turns out. Either there's controversy around how that affected the final score, or worse, it gets ugly out there. It becomes a sort of a just take matters into your own hands type of situation.
Before we get into the other end of this, I do want to ask you about a situation that did get some play, and just kind of get your thoughts, Tyler, on this. Was the Quinn Hughes, the situation with Quinn Hughes? He gets a call. The ref says basically on the mic, makes the call, and then tells Quinn to get to the box.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that? Who was in the wrong there?
Well, was it just an accidental hot mic situation, or are you suggesting that he did that on purpose to have it on the microphone?
Well, he makes the call, and then Quinn Quinn's talking to him. I don't know what Quinn is saying, but he's talking to him, and he says, "Go to the box. Get to the box."
Yeah, I mean that's almost every penalty call. I mean, guys are going to keep saying their view of it as long as they keep moving to the penalty box, and they are not, personally attacking the ref. That's just player to referee interaction. I mean, you're gonna as long as they keep moving towards the penalty box and they're just getting it out. That's just part of managing emotions. But with the microphone being on, it's kind of like the curtain was peeled back a little bit there for a moment for the fans.
Yeah. And it was definitely amusing.
Give them that.
It was definitely amusing coming from like a Pacific Northwest fan point of view, just because the last two times that those have been like highlight reel moments was a Seahawks game where he's like, "I'm trying to talk to America here."
Yes.
And then
that's a bit more jazzed up for the audience there, right? But you get to the box, please. I mean, that's how the interaction should be, right? Like the player can be mad, but the referee's still in control and calm. He's not.
Yeah, it's not like he's like, "Get to the fucking box."
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I have heard. Pretty sure I have heard like hot mic situations where the ref and the players are basically are telling each other to fuck off.
Yeah, and
I'm pretty sure I've heard that before, and that's insanely worse than just him saying, "Please go to the box, Quinn."
Yeah. And that does happen, and it, it's not, the refs are not really helping themselves with that. They've got to be the calm, in control ones, right? Like we talked about in our group chat. It's always preached in the BC hockey program, like to treat disrespect with respect. I mean, so if you're the referee and you're getting screamed at, I mean, it's going to always be a better place to be if you can stay on the respectful track. Over time, these guys see each other, throughout the season, and the history starts to build, and they're humans, and the emotions kind of take over at some point, and then you get these unfortunate interactions that are a little more colorful with the language than that one. But that's the way it should be. Is the referee stays in a respectful tone.
All right, so let's take a look at the other half of this pie, and I'll combine the two games together so we can make this, because there are some instances here that I think can work together. So it's 3-0. Elias Lindholm goes in, makes the mover. I don't know what Alexander Georgiev was thinking. I think he was out for a walk around Vancouver and wanted to do some more sightseeing, but for some unknown reason, he went after the puck. Lindholm beats him, takes the shot, and it goes off it kills Makar's pants and misses the net. Then Mikko Rantanen scores with 3.1 seconds to go in the second period, which 3-0 turns to 3-1, and Colorado has some life. They get the power play, and then the rest is history with that. To combine that with what happened against the Capitals is, yes, after the icing, it's Ovechkin that scores, but shortly, not long after that, within 50 seconds, Tom Wilson scores in pretty much the same spot at Alice. So Ovechkin scores, and the Capitals.
I think it was backwards, Kev.
Oh, it was right.
Tom Wilson scoring and then Ovechkin.
You're right. Sorry, pardon me. But ultimately, two goals in quick succession there in Washington. A goal with 3.1 seconds left in a period, which you just don't want to have happen. Only 3 shots in the third period against Colorado, and the one chance with Höglander having the best chance. It feels like there's also yes, you can be upset about the officiating, but I don't know if it's not composure that I'm necessarily saying, but situationally, this did not turn out to be a great week in a few of those situations.
Well, I mean, my comment is that the refs didn't cost the Canucks in either one of those games. I mean, they didn't help the case, but there's far more to it than that. I mean, and we've seen in earlier in the year where the Canucks have been able to rebound from some unfortunate calls or adversity, and they haven't been doing that lately, and now it's all magnified. But, it can't just be after every loss that it's going to be about the refs. Is it? Are we really going to do that? You might as well not watch the playoffs. You're just going to drive yourself insane with that. they, for whatever reason, right now they're in a little funk with responding to adversity. But that's the game. And if you're going to win a Stanley Cup, there's going to be a whole lot of that along the way. The road to the final is a bumpy one. And
you're going to have situations like this where you're not going to respond correctly.
Yeah.
So I think that's just the way it is. It happens to every team. So saying that good teams overcome this, good teams also don't overcome it.
There's
good
times
teams
they don't.
Also have funks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to overcome it at the time where it actually fucking matters, and that's the playoffs. So you have to use this as learning to figure out how to do that when it matters in the playoffs.
It is funny how
the whole idea of this hyper analysis of this and these made up narratives of good teams overcome this and no good teams, well, they also don't overcome it at times, and all this when situations like this happen, it's just as, to me, it's just as bad and frustrating to go to wade through online as the blaming of the officials. Because it's not the truth either.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I the one thing I would say, I mean, like, just there's a couple of narratives that come out of this, but we'll dig into I'm using air quotes here for those on podcasts.
Yeah.
Narrative about one particular player. But the fact of the matter is, look, I love Elias Lindholm. Everyone knows that, but he's got to start scoring goals. And like he is not the only one, but he's got to start, like, he's got to start burying some chances here. Like, it's starting to get a little frustrating, like the lack of confidence he's showing around the net, and he showed it against Colorado, and he also showed it against Washington. So I do think there's some valid criticism.
To be fair, I think that missed one against Colorado was more unlucky than anything else, and nothing about confidence, because the move he made to get around Georgiev was very confident. He just happened to hit Cale Makar's pants with the shot.
Yeah. But I mean, there's I'll save the second part of my sandwich to this, but the narrative part of this conversation has been around Elias Pettersson. And I feel like sometimes, when you were a kid, remember when you were a kid and you did something wrong and your parents called you either your full name or and added your middle name into, so when you did something wrong. I feel this is happening with Elias. When Elias Pettersson isn't playing his best hockey, we call him Elias. When he's playing great, he's Elias. I feel like I've noticed that. Like, oh, he's Elias when he plays good, and when he's bad, he's Elias. So apparently he is Elias. But he took a lot of criticism, speaking a narrative, for the game against the Colorado Avalanche, where by his admission, he said he didn't play very well. But it's, he has faced a lot of criticism this year, and I think, like, was he great against Colorado? No, but I don't think the criticism has necessarily been fair. Do you know how he had the same amount of points against Colorado that Connor McDavid had against Colorado in Saturday's game? 0. So, I'm not hearing a huge criticism about a very poor defensive play that Leon Draisaitl made that allowed Nathan McKinnon to skate down the ice and toss that thing in front of the net with 0.5 seconds to go. That ultimately cost the Oilers a point and may have cost them first place, a real true shot at first place at the Pacific Division. So I don't see the criticism towards Pettersson being fair at this point. Maybe I'm looking at this differently, or like looking at the numbers. I don't see it.
Is it because he just got the contract extension and now there's a bigger, microscope?
Well, this was before the contract. This was before the contract extension too. That we were starting to hear the criticisms.
If we really want to point to one area where the Canucks are having problems, is that they're not getting enough from the top players. They're just not. Like, it's the effort's okay, but it's not quite there where it needs to be at this point of the season with the intensity of the competition ramping up, right?
Yeah, they definitely.
Other than JT Miller, I should accept JT Miller from that because he has really been, I think, doing his part for them mostly. But other than that, and the depth scoring's dropped off. I know it hurts not having Dakota Joshua, but there's just not enough there right now. It's a little bit on the middling side.
Yeah, I have to agree with you that overall JT's probably been the most consistent out of the top 6. But I think I've noticed the most that the domination level that the top 6 had in the first half of the season kind of just hasn't really been there, or at least been there in any sort of consistent manner in the back half, or at least since the All-Star game.
No.
And I'm not sure if there's anything we can pinpoint down to as to the reason for that, or if it's just maybe fatigue at performing at that level. But I feel like maybe in contrast to what Tyler just said, like I feel like the bottom 6 has been a little bit more consistent in just being overall reliable and showing up for games if the top 6 isn't. But yeah, I think the top 6 has definitely dropped off as far as that dominance factor for sure.
I think they definitely missed the consistency factor of what was the third line to begin the season.
Yes.
Whether it was Blueger or Suter at center with Joshua and Garland. Ever since Joshua went down, they just haven't had that consistent, just almost like relief valve that third line was, because you could rely on them to go out there and have a strong forechecking cycle, like physical shift that helped build momentum, and then the next line would go out there and build off of that, and you would have the snowball effect there. They haven't been able to build off of good shifts. And that third line with Elias Lindholm is starting to look better. With Podkolzin in there, they still haven't had that just pure consistency that third line had at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. There are a number of players on the Canucks that are going through long goalless droughts. And Mikheyev scores against Colorado, but Suter hasn't scored much in a while. Teddy Blueger, as aforementioned, hasn't scored in a while. So there's a lot. I think that this is to me, it's not just it's not Pettersson. It is like a group of forwards that need to, in general, need to score more.
Yeah.
It's
not one guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's not one guy. It's the same thing with the whole before everyone went on Pettersson. It was on Lindholm and how his play wasn't good enough. But I think it's the team as a whole just isn't playing up to the standard that we saw at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. But in terms of Pettersson, I'm looking at in terms of 5-on-5 numbers, he's 12th in the league in points. He's tied with Sam Reinhart. He's got 31 goals this year, which is more, by the way, than McDavid. He's probably going to end up in the top 10 in scoring. I just the narrative. And by the way, one of the other narratives is he doesn't show up against good teams. He had 3 points against Winnipeg, who was in first place in the Central Division. Is that not a good team?
Yeah, I mean, how do you judge what's a good team? I mean, I think they're all decent teams, aren't they?
The only team that he seems to have struggled with against this year has been the Avs. He's pointless against the Avs and is a -4. The rest of them, he's either average or better than average on against.
Yeah,
I think there's just when you get into these situations where the team's not playing up to the level, people try and find something. They're that meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, trying to connect the dots and yelling and screaming about what's going on, and it's so much more complex than just Pettersson's not playing up to snuff. And because I've seen people he doesn't carry a line, or he doesn't step up when the game's on the line, but neither do there's times where Matthews doesn't. There's times when McDavid doesn't. There's times when McKinnon hasn't. McKinnon's on one hell of a season. McDavid was absolute shit to start the season. Let's be honest. And Matthews has had low times as well. All top players go through it. Yeah. And
because guess what? They're human.
And it's an 82
that sort of gets forgotten
season.
about it.
It is so you can't. Yeah, it's an 82 game season. Yeah, the Canucks have 14 games left before the playoffs, and they need to find it. But it's not like I wouldn't say I'm overly worried that Pettersson can't find it. I'm not overly worried that the Canucks can't find the matchup that they had at the beginning of the season, because I still feel like the staples are there. They lost in overtime against the Avs. They lost 2-1 to the Capitals. It's not like they're getting blown out.
Yeah, exactly.
They get a
right,
couple
those two
bounces
games
here or there
without
in both
Demko
those
too, right?
games, or even just
Yeah.
one. Yeah, and you get one bounce in one of those games. One call in one of those games goes the opposite way. It's a completely different game, and there's a chance that they win, a good chance that they win those games. So it's not like it's the where they need to be is that far out of touch, that far out of reach.
Yeah. It's a process.
Yeah. Well, and this week, in terms of this might be a good week for them to get their offensive game back. They've got Buffalo, Montreal, Calgary, and Montreal and Calgary are like, I know that there is a lot of people throwing some love at Dmitry Miramonov, but I feel like he's a bit of the new chaos giraffe in Calgary. But Montreal is an absolute tire fire in their own end. Like they're not good defensively in Calgary. I think it depends on I think that they're struggling defensively. Losing 10 of Hanovin's and Hanovan and all the new guys that they have. I think this might be a good week for the Canucks to get back on kind of that offensive confidence back this week. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a couple of more than 3-goal games this week. So I think everybody will kind of breathe a little easier, hopefully, by the time we convene next Sunday.
Yeah, and hopefully just getting this adversity out of the way now, so that way, at least in hope that when they get to the playoffs, it goes a little bit smoother and that they're a little bit more consistent in how they're playing.
Yeah, and thankfully they built up such a cushion that as far as being first in the conference, that's okay. Like I think they're behind. Are they not behind Colorado now in terms of total points? But in the division, they've got a cushion there to stay first in the division. So it still means a pretty decent, in theory, first round matchup if they can just kind of weather through this rough patch here. And yeah, to Chris's point,
They're currently first in the West.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
they're 1 point
rather
up on Colorado.
There you go.
And Dallas.
And so, but to Chris's point, you'd rather face that adversity now than say 2 or 3 weeks down the road, just on the eve of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, just quickly, the other Canucks news this week. Of course, Demko's week to week. Still no word of when he'll be back. I thought Casey DeSmith showed really well though overall. I don't think there's anything to complain about the goaltending from Casey DeSmith. I thought he was solid for the 2 games.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as far as Demko, I'm pretty sure I've seen everything from like 2 to 4 or 3 to 4 weeks. So if everything goes right, he'll be back by this time next week. Is a potentiality. If not, it'll be there'll be a good chance it will be the week after. Is my guess.
Yeah. I suspect he'll play in this homestand, which is it's a 9 games. So I feel like that. Yeah. DPD, as he's known, Elias Pettersson, has transferred from Sweden, gotten on the shores of North America, and has joined the Abbotsford Canucks. And Christian Fulton, defenseman, was signed to a 1-year contract. Don't know if there's anything really.
Just a key.
Go ahead.
A key aspect of that Felton one is that 1 year deal starts next year, and he's on an ATO with Abbotsford for the rest of the season.
Okay, there we go. In terms of with the Canucks, is there anything else that we need to dive into here?
Just want to mention that Quinn Hughes broke his own single-season franchise record for points as a defenseman last night as well, rewriting the history books for the Canucks again. So I think there's no doubt. We knew this going into the season, but there's no doubt for sure that he's the best defenseman that the Canucks have had in franchise history.
Yeah.
That you're doing well when you break your own record 3 seasons in a row. I guess this is technically the second season in a row that he's broken his own record.
2 seasons in a row.
It's going all right.
He's doing okay. I feel like we're taking him for granted in a lot of ways, though. I think it's starting to get that point. He's just been quietly doing his job. I think is it hands down he gets a Doris, or is this a 2-horse race? Is this Hughes and Makar?
I mean, if Makar hadn't been as injured as he has been, also Makar hasn't been as dominant as he normally has been the past several seasons this season. So I feel like it's mostly just a 1-horse race, but I'm sure there's probably talking heads and writers out there that will probably argue that it's a 2-horse race just for the sake of getting clicks.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on this one. To me, Makar is still the guy, and it's going to be hard to knock him off.
To me, he's kind of what Patrice Bergeron was with the Selke. Like he's always going to be in the finalists in the running. It just might not be necessarily his every single year, but he's always going to be in that conversation. That's what Makar is going to be for the Norris.
Sean?
And Hughes had such a good start to the season. And I expect, and Makar's been a little bit better of late. So the recency bias could play a factor into it. But I think it should be, I haven't dove into it, but Hughes definitely will be right there in the running. So,
yeah. The third guy in that race for me, by the way, is Noah Dobson. But we'll see what happens there.
Very much agree there, Kev. He should be the third, the third place in that one for him. He's been having one hell of a season.
Okay, well, let's go on. The NHL has a history of 2 long-lasting, unhealthy relationships. It's almost like a Devin and Tyler relationship. It's about as unhealthy as that one. First of all, the NHL's love for Arizona is just up there as one of the unhealthy relationships that they're still in, but maybe not in anymore, according to Elliot Friedman last night. The talk of relocation is on the table with Arizona. They are in that bid for land that it goes on in June. But according to Friedman, they know that this is Captain Obvious. They know that that 1,400-seat arena at a university hockey rink cannot continue anymore. My goodness, breaking news. But that's not the only one that they have this long, unhealthy relationship for. There are 2 groups now bidding for an NHL expansion team in Atlanta. One of them, of course, is led by Anson Carter, former Vancouver Canuck, and another group is involved. So I guess this is kind of how I'm sort of seeing this. If anyone sees differently, I see Arizona. I do think Arizona is going to leave. I think that I think the owners, I think everybody's kind of just fed up with the situation. And I think Arizona is going to end up leaving. And they will either go to A, Houston, or B, Salt Lake City. I think one of those other 2 teams are going to get, and the other part of that story is the talk that the NHL wants to get to 36 teams. So the loser, the one that doesn't get Arizona, will get the expansion team. They will find a way. They will get back into Atlanta. And then there's going to be one other team. And I'm kind of going to throw a raw. I don't know if this is too raw of a bone or too hot of a take. I don't think it actually is. I see Cincinnati as being the other team that jumps into this. It's an Eastern market. It's a large market. There is a hockey influence there. I know that there was a lot of people saying that this is going to be an opportunity for Quebec City to come back. I just don't see it. I think that they're going to find another place, and that will be Cincinnati.
Does Ohio
Quebec City will come back? No, but
Go ahead.
Quebec City will come back. It'll be when Atlanta fails again.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. It's the way of Atlanta. So Quebec City, mark this. So let's mark down, plan this. So it's 2024. They get an expansion team by 2037. Quebec, you got a team. Congratulations.
I mean, I have no intel, but I would think that Salt Lake City is the most likely destination for the Coyotes if they are to move. Expansion, I think expansion right now it's just political posturing at this point, isn't it? Like, I don't see that as a real possibility. How are you got to get to 36 teams? Like if you to have a balanced schedule, you got to get to at least 2 more, but ideally 4 more. I mean, how do you do that in a short period of time?
I don't think it's going to be a short period of time. I think 36 will happen, but it's not going to be in this decade.
No.
Yeah, it'll be 2030.
Yeah, I think because you're watering down the talent pool quite a bit if the faster that gets implemented.
I don't see Houston being a legit an option unless they get another owner in there. Because from what I've understood from listening to 32 Thoughts, is that Fertitta, the owner of the Rockets, balked at both the Vegas and the Seattle expansion fee prices and doesn't want to pay that much, and it's going to be more next time. So I think it's going to be tough to get into Houston, even though I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, Atlanta, like, you've had 2 shots at it. You had players with the Thrashers. You had one of the most dynamic hockey players in the world in Ilya Kovalchuk, and you couldn't fill that fucking barn.
Yeah.
And I just don't. Yeah, they'll probably go back there, but it's just ridiculous because it's like it just makes no sense. None. It's, as you said, for us as the outsiders, it's looking at like two of your friends go in a relationship where they break up and get back together multiple times, and everyone knows it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
Just cut ties and move on.
And it's really.
I think we have a new clip for the opening.
I don't see it.
Yeah. It's in 2 relationships. One, they shouldn't be. One is completely unhealthy and they need to break it off. And the other one they're thinking about they're doting back into after two really bad long-term stints. Like, it's
expansion talk always is. There's always some motivations for everybody to put that on the table because it does generate more discussion in places where they might have some new fans to be gained from having that discussion. So I don't know. I never take expansion talk too seriously.
And I think the reason why the NHL is so, I guess, loyal to these 2 markets is just due to the population sizes in those markets. Gary just sees potential dollar signs and wants to basically actualize it. But like Sean was talking about, or Kev and Sean are talking about, like, they're just toxic relationships that they shouldn't be in and should know better by now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that's why I
just
kind of
call
think
Gary Bettman.
Go,
sorry, do we just give Gary Bettman a new nickname and call him Gold Digger Gary?
That kind of works, doesn't it? Yeah.
But that's why Cincinnati makes a lot of sense to me, because Ohio is a pretty big market. It's an untapped National Hockey League market, and there is both Cleveland and Cincinnati do have hockey history. So, and you have the Kelseys are pretty well known for hockey there, and you also have Renee Paquette, who lives in Cincinnati as well, and she's a huge hockey fan. So you have people that can drive that hockey market in Cincinnati. And Cleveland, Yeah, I think Cleveland's a good market. I think Ohio is a potentially good market. That's if Gary, if you're going to gold dig, there's some good love in Ohio.
Yeah. I mean, does that impact Columbus somehow? Like,
Wouldn't that help Columbus?
well, you're still
Like if we're
competing for
thinking Houston
TV
helps
viewership.
Dallas, wouldn't Cincinnati help Columbus? Wouldn't an Ohio rivalry be?
There's a lot more population down in Texas than there is in Ohio.
You're still competing for the sports spending dollars that are available there, right? Like, and TV watching.
Yeah, I'm not sure about demographic sizes, but like if the NHL was previously in Kansas City, like is the proximity to St. Louis maybe a reason that wouldn't work this time around? As opposed, like if we're like talking about potential spots, like would Kansas City make more sense than a Cincinnati?
Well, the only reason I said Cincinnati, the other thing I said with Cincinnati is they're an Eastern. Like if you're going to do this with a balance of even teams, you need one more Eastern team, and that Cincinnati makes the most sense. I mean, I guess you can put Kansas City in the East, but it doesn't seem East. Unless you move, like I don't know who you would move from the West into the East, on the other side of that. I don't know how that would work. I mean, maybe you move Dallas over to the East. That feels weird. I don't know.
Or if Houston ends up coming in, yeah, you could potentially argue that because Houston's east of Dallas, that you could throw Houston into the East, but then that would also be shooting yourself in the foot as far as like that rivalry. I don't know.
The two farthest East teams in the West are Nashville and Chicago at this point.
Yeah, Nashville would be the one. In terms of you gotta keep a big market original six team like Chicago in the Western Conference they're a big attraction for whenever they go on the road, right? It was like that with Detroit when they were a Western Conference team. Those games are always well attended wherever they went.
I guess the only other option, I guess, if you're going east is I don't really feel a lot of momentum to it, but the percentage that there's a second team in Southern Ontario.
I think they'd go to Quebec before they do that.
Yeah, and I don't think they want to go to Quebec.
I think
if they wanted to, they'd be there already.
I think they do want to go to Quebec, but they need the corporate. They need the corporate side to be there. We're already seeing the issues in Winnipeg. Quebec would just be another version of that. So they would need to have the corporate backing, and I think that's the only thing holding back. I think they would go to Gold Digger Gary would go to Quebec if the corporate backing was there. I just don't think it is right now.
Yeah. I think that's more of a possibility than a second team in the Greater Toronto area. I don't think that's on the table at all. The Leafs and the Sabres don't want their territory being infringed upon, and then, the Red Wings fan base encapsulates a good portion of the Windsor area. You got the Senators there as well. I just don't see where there's any
Buffalo.
Sort of I mentioned the Sabres. Yeah, there's no room for another team. Just despite the population, I just don't ever see that happening, but I might be eating my words on that 10 years from now. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be much motivation politically for that to happen, both within the league and amongst the other teams that would be affected.
If it was Canada in a bubble, in the same sense that like both New York and LA both have two teams in most of the major sports leagues in North America, like if it was just Canada in a bubble, you could make that argument. But yeah, if we're talking about the proximity of the American teams that are close to Toronto, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like the one reason that Atlanta does make sense is the fact that they are partnered with TNT, who's based out of Atlanta.
Yes. Yeah, I think that kind of helps move the needle for that.
And now one of their main guys on their panel is fronting the.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any. That's no coincidence, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But there's no empirical evidence that they will attend a hockey game. Like,
if the team's good right away, like, see, when Atlanta came in before, they weren't set up for success like we've seen with Vegas and Seattle with the more recent expansions. I mean, if whatever expansion team, whether it's in Atlanta or somewhere else, has that opportunity to be good right away. Yeah, that's a big market. Maybe it could work, but when they failed twice before, it's hard to argue that we should give them a third chance when there's all these other places that are screaming for a team, and there's lots of reasons to think it would be well supported.
But yeah, it definitely seemed like that group of expansion teams that came into the league at around year 2000, like a lot of them really struggled out of the gate to kind of get themselves going and get momentum. Like if I recall correctly, like Columbus was kind of in financial trouble for a good while in the first 10, 15 years of its existence, and it's only in the past couple of years that they've maybe have kind of come to a place that they're actually feeling relatively stable. So if the singular expansion of like what Vegas and Seattle has done, if that has kind of changed the model of how NHL wants to approach expansion, they might have a better chance on the third time's the charm. But yeah, like we've already kind of made the point of, is there really an appetite there to give Atlanta a third try?
Well, it's probably more there than there is to have a team in Quebec City, which nobody in Canada wants to hear. But I think
both
that's
population base and financial backing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, Winnipeg did get a sellout this on Friday against Anaheim, so kudos to them. So we'll see what the playoffs hold for and how the attendance is for that. I think will be interesting, but they do need a long playoff run. I think at least a 2-round playoff run, I think, would probably help them. But certainly, yeah, I'm not worried. I don't think there's worry. I'm not worried that Winnipeg is leaving or anything. But I mean, I think it is, that's that corporate cautionary tale, and the kind of the economic situation that we're in right now is not everyone can afford a game, unfortunately. So,
yeah.
And I kind of wonder in terms of that, like if they're wanting to get butts in seats, what do you lower the price to? And if you lower the price to a point where you're actually like losing money per ticket just to get butts in seats, like the long-term viability of that. And yeah, it's an intricate balance that they're going to have to strike to kind of make that work.
Yeah, it's not easy decisions for sure. So wanted to talk about something Nikita Zadorov pointed out this week that I'm sure some fan bases were having smiled and some fan bases were like, wait, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm sure there was very mature reaction to all of that.
I'm sure there was. As Twitter continues to show, or X continues to show, great maturity on a daily basis, just the human growth that we see from the X and Twitter. It's really giving me faith in humankind every time I log into that Hell's game. I need a sarcasm sign. But I just thought it would be interesting. So if you were to start a franchise, Nikita Zadorov said he would start it with Nathan MacKinnon. But I put it towards Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid, or Austin Matthews. Out of the three, or you can switch Austin Matthews for another player if you want. Who do you start your franchise with?
I would like McKinnon.
You guys go first.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I would go with Nathan MacKinnon myself. It's just a personal preference thing. I mean, there's not like you can go wrong with really any of those choices, I think.
Yeah, they're all like top tier elite players, but yeah, like Tyler just mentioned, it kind of does come down to each person's individual like opinion and what they like to see in certain players and whatnot. But I think I'd have to agree with Tyler and Zadorov for that matter. And MacKinnon, he's a horse. He's intense. Like he's got personality that McDavid doesn't have, even if McDavid is more statistically impressive in some regards. Yeah, I feel like out of the three of them, McKinnon's kind of the most well-rounded of the three.
I like that bark and snarl to McKinnon's game as well. It's what makes him a lot of fun to watch. And if I were an Avalanche fan, I mean, yeah, the whole bit about the reason why the Zadorov thing got so many headlines is because he mentioned how McKinnon's won a cup already, and he's not saying these other guys by name, but he's won a cup already, and the other people in this discussion haven't. But I mean, that only means so much. Like in this sort of speculative question we're kicking around here.
I'd go McKinnon as well because I'll say it. I'll go McKinnon as well because he has won a cup. He knows what it takes to win a cup. He has this like drill sergeant like mentality and ability to command the room that neither of those other two have, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's got Matthews' defensive game is the closest to what McKinnon can bring. McDavid has made some strides in the past couple seasons in that aspect, but it's not quite where McKinnon is. And if you call this is probably the old school side of me. He is the old school captain that you want leading your team. He's not the quiet guy. He's not. He leads by example, but he also he leads by in other ways too. So I think when you take it all in for me, you give me McKinnon, like and watch him build a team and carry a team on his back the way he has. Like, and I think Kev, you said like what the hell did McKinnon do at the end of the game last night? What he always fucking does.
Yeah.
But just
find a way to lead his team to a win.
Like just the awareness of just everybody, the entire Oiler team just kind of just stopped, and he just went down the ice, and a good on Lehkonen to just go to the net, and McKinnon looked that with 0.5 to go. That just to me, it was like that's the that's the best. He's probably playing the best hockey in the world right now. He to me, there's no debate on the MVP. It's Nate. I know Matthews is going to get all this because of the goals. It's Nathan McKinnon that has hands down the Hart Trophy winner for me. Like, he's my vote. Like, and he would be my vote of who to start a franchise with. So, too, like I agree with everything you guys have said. He's, there's just something about him that he hates to lose. It feels like he hates to lose more than McDavid does.
And I think the amount of time he spent with Crosby, both as a kid and just in the offseason and whatnot, I feel has probably an osmosis effect on him.
Yeah, maybe.
We should just remind Oilers fans, we're not saying this to kick Connor McDavid in any fashion, okay? Just relax. Get over yourself.
Not personal.
It's not personal, okay? We don't dislike Connor McDavid.
Yeah, maybe you aren't doing it that way, Tyler.
Okay, I'm not doing it. I don't speak for Sean on this show, apparently.
Yeah.
McDavid is a fantastic player. I just when you look at the totality of all their games and what they've done in their careers, who would I want leading my team if I'm starting a team from scratch? It's McKinnon.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the key, from scratch, right? You want the guy that doesn't want to lose leading your team.
Yeah.
Not that the others don't want to. That's just what McKinnon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to get and talk about?
No, I don't think so. We've done well here today. We've really crammed a good agenda into an hour.
Yeah.
One last question.
It's a 6 for us.
Yeah.
One last question. I'm going to actually borrow one from Dylan from earlier. I think it's a good one. With all the expansion talk and relocation talk, what would you prefer? To take a young and upcoming Coyotes roster, or get to draft your own vision? Making assumption here based off of the last two expansion draft rules.
Yeah, hard to argue the benefits of the draft, the lottery and expansion, like the expansion draft. There's the draft lottery, I guess, does apply to the expansion team. But the way it was set up for Vegas and Seattle, let's just simplify this. I mean, the first year Vegas went to the Stanley Cup final, and Seattle was into the playoffs in their second year and reached the second round. So hard to argue against taking that. having a chance to start from scratch.
I mean, yeah, can't really disagree with that. I'm pretty much just going to double up on Tyler's point there. I think I would take the same route. No argument that the roster that the Coyotes have drafted over the past couple of years have been fairly good and definitely are promising. But yeah, you can't really argue with the success that the last two expansion teams have had.
Okay, so if my team that I'm picking here, is it the Arizona Coyotes? Or can I pick another? Is there an option for another younger roster?
No, it's the Coyotes, Coyotes? Because you're picking a relocated Coyotes team or an expansion team.
Okay, yeah, the expansion team. The Coyotes have been in this perennial draft guys, and they might show, and we'll pray to God that they'll figure out the game of hockey. And they've got all these they have all these draft picks, but an expansion team, no question about it. And plus, I think there's 25 teams that are not competing for a Stanley Cup. So, I know that there's a general manager, but will give me Thomas Hertl and a couple of third round picks to take Thomas Hertl's salary. Right on. I'll go that way.
I take the Coyotes. I think there's been a mismanaged from the top down. If you have a good owner and a good GM, you can turn that team into a winner pretty quickly. You've got Sean Durst. He's a solid defenseman. The defense is the only issue I have with them right now, because I really like that forward group. You can supplement them with some good pros. Go out and find your own JT Miller. Go out and find your own someone like that. And to supplement that, you've got Barrett Hayden, you've got Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, all very good players. Logan Cooley and Dylan Genther are going to be good for the future. On the blue line, that's my only issue. Karol Vejmelka and Connor Ingram are going to be good enough if you can get the right coach system and defense in front of them. Give me the Coyotes. I think with the right ownership and the right GM and the right coach, you can definitely turn that team into at least a perennial playoff team in 2-3 years.
So you would fire Andre Tourigny, get in your own coach and run the ball with that way? Yep.
But you said the defense is your issue. What about Shea Weber? He's on their roster.
They've had some great defensemen on wasn't Brent Seabrook was Tampa, but
you get them out of Arizona, you get them out of this constant just hitting the salary cap floor. You start building a proper fucking hockey team with the pieces that you have there. I think you'll be better than any expansion team in 3 to 5 years.
I can see what you're saying. I don't think it's an outlandish take. I can see what you're saying. I think just for me, I think you do have a bevy of getting. There's always these teams that just don't have the roster. I think one of the reasons the Kraken have been close to success was they were able to get a Yanni. You can get a face of the franchise pretty quickly with this expansion way. I don't know.
Who is the face of the franchise for the Kraken?
Good question.
Jordan McCann? Jordan Eberle?
It's Matty Beniers who they got in the draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I think Vegas
the best player that the Kraken got out of that expansion draft was Vince Dunn.
Yeah. But they did what
and
Vegas did.
You can find a trade for that. Vegas was able to capitalize on absolutely more GMs who did not understand the rules and tried to galaxy brain it. The GMs have and the teams have got a lot smarter for the Kraken one, and they'll get smarter for the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely were out of practice, if you will, when it came to the Vegas one, because there hadn't been an expansion in 15 or so years.
little less than that. I guess it goes back to when the Blue Jackets and Wild came in 99, 2000, I think, or around then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would have been about 16, 17 years then.
And
Oh, wait,
Seattle-
and then
fake.
wait,
Yeah,
Nashville was after
yeah,
that.
okay, yeah.
And then Nashville came in 2000.
Nashville. It was. I believe it was Nashville, and then Atlanta, and then I think the other two at the end of the 1990s. There.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
the draft rules were so much different from those until the last two, right? So
Yeah.
they're still you're still set up for success with these rules, but teams we're getting smarter. You didn't see teams giving Seattle a whole first line.
Yeah. Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Just so they could hold on to, what was it, Alex Petrovich? Like,
Oh boy, some of those choices you go back to and think,
Oh,
what were
yeah.
they thinking?
My God, yeah. Like
That's
Florida-
trying to predict the future. Nobody has the crystal ball.
Yeah, for Florida, like it's almost funny that it was Florida playing Vegas last year, considering Florida pretty much gave Vegas the success that they had in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, that's a good question, I think. Something to consider. I actually asked someone that before, which that's a good question. Good job, Dylan. Good job, Sean. But we'll leave it there. How do we follow everyone?
I am BeardedConnect03 on Twitter.
I'm on the X.com, formerly known as Twitter, at Tnoble, Tnoble.
You're mature on the X.
I have my moments.
I'm at Schneids on all the social medias.
Devin, who will be back, he's selling fruit and vegetable peelers. I always want to make sure that we clarify what he's doing there. Gordhouse09. Check out for Dan and Matt. We'll be recording the Fireside Chat podcast tonight, so they'll be talking all things Flames. Dan and I did that yesterday. You can follow me on all social medias at KEVULE. Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks, and subscribe wherever you get your audio. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we will talk to you all very, very soon. Bye for now. As I move my mouse. Maybe Sean can end the stream.
We can't sign off the broadcast.
Yeah.